So here's our last little piece of notes for this unit. You can choose to watch if you like to. Understand that the whole idea of terrorism was not a new thing. This actually started up earlier in the 1990s, where there were different events of terrorism that had taken place. There was after the Persian Gulf War, Al Qaeda got started. There were terrorist attacks not on U.S. soil but on U.S. targets. There were bombings at two U.S. embassies in Africa, both Tanzania and Kenya, and also a bombing at the World Trade Center in 1993. It was in the basement and parking lot of the World Trade Center. I remember it happening where Al Qaeda bombed the World Trade Center. It wasn't a big bomb; it was minor, not the same level, of course, as 9/11. And also USS Cole is a U.S. destroyer, a U.S. warship that was posted in Yemen, and there was a suicide attack on that warship. Also, there were also local terrorists. Timothy McVeigh and blew up, used a fertilizer bomb to blow up a federal building as a homegrown terrorist type deal. So it's not a new thing. It's been kind of building up over time. Of course, 9/11 being when Al Qaeda hijackers flew planes into Pentagon, World Trade Center, and another plane that crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. We talked about this first part of the year on the anniversary of 9/11 of what had happened. And after this, President Bush declares what he called a war on terrorism. And so we have a few things that happen. We have a new department called Homeland Security. This is taking care of, basically protecting the homeland, making sure people can't get in that we don't want to be in. They take over immigration. The Coast Guard is now part of this. There's a new terror alert system of where we're at. We're low, guarded, elevated, higher, severe. We've gone to orange. We have not yet gone to red, as far as I know, since it came out. So now there's a new kind of system like that. You have the TSA, which is to check transportation on airplanes. I mean, you used to be able to take knives on airplanes back then. It's insane. Now you're being searched and checked for shoes and belts and all those kind of things. You're checked for everything. Also, the idea of Patriot Act, kind of how things can be watched and how internet can be searched, phone calls we listen to, surveillance can be used in case somebody's a terrorist. And so all these different things kind of change after 9/11. And so the foreign policy response is that President Bush gets up and he calls Iraq, Iran, North Carolina an axis of evil. People are going to try and hurt the United States potentially, and we need to be ready to fight against those groups if we need to. And kind of says, hey, there's bad stuff going on here. The guy here, Osama bin Laden, was blamed for the attacks on the U.S. He was blamed for those attacks that took place. George Bush called for other countries to come in and help us out, take down the terrorist groups. And so in October 2001, the U.S., British, and Canada, we invaded Afghanistan, trying to find bin Laden, hunt him down, and get rid of him. They call it Operation Enduring Freedom. In Afghanistan, there's a group called the Taliban. They were a very strict religious group that was ruling Afghanistan. They had actually welcomed Osama in and taken care of him, all those kind of things. And the U.S. was able to oust the Taliban, get rid of them, but couldn't find bin Laden until just a few years ago, and when he was then killed. And so U.S. forces are still actually in parts of Afghanistan trying to keep warlords and other groups under control in Afghanistan. At the same time, you have the Iraq War. Saddam Hussein was still president of Iraq, and as part of the first war deal, there were, ideas of weapons of mass destruction, a WMD. And WMD is either a nuclear, biological, or chemical weapon that could hurt a lot of people. A massive weapon, okay? And so the United States, United Nations, we're supposed to send inspectors in and check for WMDs, and Saddam refused. And he would not allow them to complete the inspection to see if there were any massive weapons there, whether it be chemical weapons or biological weapons that spread disease, or even, for that matter, a nuclear weapon. And so when this happened, they couldn't find his WMDs. Congress passed a resolution saying the president could authorize troops to go into Iraq. And so March 2003, this would be my senior high school, is where we saw U.S. bombing started. And they call it shock and awe. We watch it live on TV. It's actually interesting to watch it live happen on TV for days about bombing in Iraq, how cities are being bombed, all that kind of stuff is going on. And then a group of soldiers, it was U.S., British, Australian, Polish, went in and defeated the army. And it took a couple of years, but eventually Saddam Hussein was captured. He was found hiding what they call a spider hole. He was, growing a beard and hidden all that kind of stuff. And he was later executed for crimes against humanity when he had ordered a chemical attack on a village and wiped out that village. And so it was kind of a genocide type thing. He was hanged for his crime, and supposedly the videos out there of him being hanged. So we took cell phone video of it and posted it. But that's a whole nother story. And that was in 2003, and that started 2006 or so, I believe, when Saddam was found. I was in college when that happened. As far as we know now, the WMDs were never found in Iraq, and we actually found them. They were never found. It's really hard to tell how many Iraqi civilians have died. We're talking up to maybe 500,000. We're talking as of 2007, probably 600,000. Now we're talking. At this point right now, over 6,000 American soldiers have been killed. About 30,000 or so have been wounded, as in both Iraq and Afghanistan so far as part of this ongoing conflict that's been happening. It's kind of been very polar. There were protests, kind of very similar to Iraq. There were protests. It's been kind of a guerrilla war in both Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, booby traps, if you will, snipers. I personally know a couple of sold guys who I graduated high school with who have served in either Iraq or Afghanistan who were injured by these roadside bombs, those kind of things. That was a different kind of war. And it's very comparable to Vietnam in a way, and that people say, is it a war you can win? Even in terms of Iraq, how the United States had to pull out of Iraq, it was, train the Iraqis to take over, almost like a Vietnamization kind of thing, if you will. You kind of see those linkages to history a little bit in terms of these two conflicts that kind of drag on for a long, long time. Last little spiel here, guys. So, look at the U.S. population. In the 90s to now, we see the U.S. population getting older, actually. Yeah, really getting older. There's more elderly people now than ever was before. There's a little breakdown. Most population between 22 and 64 years, my age, and you kind of see a breakdown of children, but really elderly is 12.4%, which is actually a pretty big part. Because now as this current group that's right here gets older, they're going to become a much bigger part of the population. I mean, the average life expectancy now in the United States, people are going to live in their 70s due to healthcare, all those kind of deals. And as that baby boomer generation, the generation that might be your grandparents, my parents, who were, born in the 40s and 50s, lived through the 60s, get older, this elderly part is going to become a much bigger chunk of the pie here. And, think about the cost of healthcare going forward. Think about the Social Security. They're not going to be Social Security for you and me, guys. Probably not. It's going to be going towards, that generation. There might be less workers going forward, less people take over jobs. And so to go forward, the population is going to make some decisions about what we're going to do as a country. Immigration is also a really big topic. We've seen a lot of immigration happening in the United States. About 12.4% of the U.S. population is immigrants. And a lot of times it's illegal immigration. So if you want to immigrate legally, you have to have permission. You get a visa. You get what's called a green card, which believe it or not, it's actually purple. And you see, looking at decades of immigration here, it really springs up here near the very end. And the question is why people want to come to the United States and where they're coming from. They're coming from Latin America, coming from Mexico, Central America, South America, even a little bit from Asia yet. It comes down to a better chance of life. The United States, the jobs pay a lot more money than they do in Mexico or in Central America. There's a much better opportunity. There's some political freedoms and less unrest. There's certain cities in Latin America where there's still a lot of political unrest, a lot of political problems. And obviously there's kind of a nativist or people that live here in the United States are getting a little angry about that because then there's accusation of taking jobs, who's paying for all these kind of things. And so immigration becomes a huge topic going forward here. Last is the idea of technology. You guys know I love. And we always see the U.S. to be linked to other parts of the world. We see the growth of cell phones, growth of that technology really link us around the world. It's kind of a cool map. It shows where the internet is very popular, how much, the color shows how much internet is being used. And just kind of see U.S., where internet is being used. You see Europe, a little bit in South America, India, certain parts of other countries. Otherwise, most of the world is pretty blacked out here yet. But it does link us up to lots of the world. But that leads to outsourcing of jobs. Not only like manufacturing jobs have gone to China and Taiwan and Vietnam making stuff, but now you're starting to see tech jobs move with technology. Like India and the Philippines have huge call centers that take care of computer issues, computer problems. You've seen a lot of cities in the Midwest become those Rust Belt cities where jobs have left. Even though all these things are going on, the U.S. is still very, very attractive to immigrants. Even though there's lack of jobs, those kind of things, people still want to come here. But other countries are trying to catch up. We're talking about some world history, but they stated in India, maybe someday India might become the new United States. But you see companies now that are located in multiple countries, all connected by the internet, and there's a lot of new worries and new troubles out of this. I mean, not only is there issues about security, like how secure is your information, but also national security about what happens if people are going to hack into the government, those kind of questions. There's worries about what people do on the internet in terms of your privacy, your pictures that are being sent around. All those kind of questions come around here, and as we go forward in the world, we'll have to answer some of those questions as your generation moves forward. That's it, guys. That's the notes for this. You can use, like I said, use these, use your book, use whatever you want to use. That's fine. And we'll go from there on your final project. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.